I heard a good joke the other day. You know why the Fed can't raise interest rates? Because the economy is too strong.
Welcome to the future of money, where we'll take a rather red pill look at the economies around the world and what is really going on behind the scenes and what's ahead, more importantly, because knowing what's ahead allows us to plan better today. So right now, yes, the joke is that the Fed cannot raise interest rates because the economy is too strong. And most people can see the paradox there. And a strong economy would normally have normal interest rates, normalized interest rates of around 5% plus. That gives you ammunition to prepare for future recessions, because you can use that 5% plus to cut back on and reduce to stimulate the economy. With the Fed at around about 1.5% right now, they don't have any ammunition for a future recession, and there's many indicators that recession is around the corner. So that would imply cutting down even into negative rates, which Trump has talked about, as we'll see in this clip now.
The Federal Reserve should get our interest rates down to zero or less, and we should then start to refinance our debt. Interest costs could be brought way down, while at the same time substantially lengthening the term. So restructuring our debt our debt here, I guess it would take care of his deficit problem.
Yeah, it's pretty. I think this is the first time he's actually suggested that the Fed go to negative rates. Mm-hmm. There are some real questions among experts and commentators about whether the Fed could even legally do that.
What central banks have done around the world is they've tried to pervert the economic cycle by lowering interest rates down to zero or near zero or even below zero in some Scandinavian countries. The economic cycle gives you pleasure, it gives you pain. The pleasure is when times are good, business is going well, then great. But there's always going to be a time where the risk is such that businesses become complacent. They provide services that people no longer need, and we need some creative destruction to get rid of those businesses and to essentially, like cause a forest fire, burn down the dead wood, and then create a fresh new economy when the cycle turns again out of recession. That cycle is really necessary, but the problem is that central banks around the world have tried to take the pain part away from that cycle. So they've just crashed interest rates down to zero, and they don't want the recession. They don't want the pain to be felt, because now the debts are so high that if we do go into recession, then it's going to cause mayhem, because a lot of zombie companies have been kept alive for so long now, for over 10 years, that a real recession now would be something that we haven't really seen before. The other problem is central banks know they can't return back to this normal economic cycle, because that would mean normalizing interest rates. And how can you do that when you have so much debt? That becomes very, very difficult. You have this debt mountain, and so you just have to be cornered into this low zero interest rate policy zone now, just like Japan have been for the last 30 years. They are exactly in that situation now. They crashed their own interest rates down because their debt burdens were so high, and they've never recovered from it in 30 years. And that seems to be the future of the West. They seem to be following Japan in that respect. There are cultural differences, there are those differences are there, but essentially economically, in terms of economic policy, the West are going to follow Japan, and it's going to be a long, long period of low to no growth, stagflation, and huge debts that can never be serviced. The moral hazard of cheap debt is that asset prices go up way faster than wages. And a great example of that are house prices. House prices have shot up post GFC, post the last financial crash, way faster than wages. And they have been for 20 years plus. And so the moral hazard here is that the younger generations now simply cannot afford to buy a house. And that has huge social impacts as well, because people aren't marrying in the numbers they used to, not having children in the numbers they used to, staying at home with their parents. They're delaying all these big decisions because property is just way, way too expensive. But of course, in the mainstream media, they cheerlead whenever house prices go up as if everyone's a boomer, as if everyone was born in the 50s or whatever. It's so bizarre, because now the majority of people now are they don't want to be in this housing bubble. They want the bubble to burst so that we can get on with our lives. And this is a huge consequence of this now 10 years of cheap debt. It has created this terrible situation where asset prices are way, way overvalued. And the other moral hazard really is that there's been so much malinvestment in everything, especially stock markets. People don't want to put money in a bank anymore. It doesn't make any money at all, so they'll throw money anywhere else. It's this kind of casino investing where you might as well just stick it in the stock market and see how it goes. And so especially the US stock market has been propped up with huge amounts of malinvestment. And while the stock market's going up, it might seem like everything's great. But when you've got so much malinvestment into a stock market, as soon as it turns south, it will absolutely fold. All of that malinvestment will be pulled out, and the exit doors are going to be so small, there's going to be so many people trying to rush to them, that it's just going to be a huge mess. So it's completely unsustainable. And again, the mainstream media don't want to talk about this. They don't want to mention it. Everything's fine until it isn't, of course.